G'day everyone. This is Itsuchi 2 from the Naruto Clash Ninja Ultimate Clash Ninja project. Hello from Australia again. For those of you who did not know, I have since moved from the US to Australia, so may speak a little bit different now. That's on purpose. I deal with a lot of clientele from Australia and New Zealand, so I try to adapt the accent as much as possible to so they don't feel weird when they talk to me. Anyway, besides the point, hello, welcome back. I'd like to do a vlog. I think this is like my first one or second one from Australia. Thank you so much for the positive feedback on Teaser 6. It's been incredible. I've been reading all of your comments and trying to reply as much as possible on both the videos and Discord. Incredible to have finally gotten everybody in the game. I know the movesets, of course, aren't in yet, but basically up until this point, it's been a myth whether or not we could actually get characters from all the different games, the GameCube games, the Wii games, the Dragon Blade side spin-off games, and get them all in one game. That was kind of been a myth, even with my progress up until that point. I knew I probably could do it, but I hadn't actually seen if I could, and I didn't know what that would take. And holy moly, did it take. It took me almost a month to get everybody in. So, Jesus, I hope you guys enjoyed it and are having fun playing with these dummy characters because it took me way too long to get them in the game. I'm going to show you what that process looks like and what I have to do. There are actually about 76 characters in the game, excluding alternate outfits. Including alternate outfits, there's more than, I think, 150 models just for the characters. So I'm going to show you what I had to do 150 times when building this game, just for Teaser 6, and why it took me a month. So that's what we're going to dive into today. I'll try not to keep you too long. It is a slightly lengthy process. I hope that I can at least, I may cut some corners. I won't go into all the details. So if you don't follow some things, that's all right. You're welcome to, comment, and I'm happy to tell you what I did. But I'll just show you what that process is like as quickly as possible, and we'll start from scratch. So first I'm going to go into my assets folder. I have a spot for them. I basically had pulled all the assets from the games. Actually, you know what? No, I'll do something different. I'm going to actually go to the game itself so you can see if you have the files already. You can see what that looks like. So where do I have those saved? Games. So I'm going to pull a Wii model today. I'm not getting into GameCube. I'm not getting into that. Oh my God, GameCube is like twice as hard. So we'll do the easy models for today. So let's pull a model from EX3. So we'll go into EX3's game files. We're going to open up their character folder. And I think I'm going to let's do Sasuke. So Sasuke's, you can tell by the initials, they're all of the initials of the characters. So Orochimaru, Naruto, and we're going to grab Sasuke's model. The 0000 is the primary, and then the 0100 is their secondary. I'm going to get the primary, of course. So we'll go ahead and open that up. For those that are not familiar, Clash Ninja uses the same asset files as Super Smash Bros. Brawl. So you can use this cool software called Brawlbox that allows you to open up these models. So there's our Sasuke model. Looking straight out of EX3, horrible quality. I actually used the Dragon Blade model for Sasuke and SPA, combined SPA and Dragon Blade. We'll get into that later too. But let's just use this model, this terrible model for now. Brawlbox makes it really easy to export. You just literally right click and hit export. And then we're going to find, I'm just going to go to my Ultimate Clash of Ninja file. We're going to assets and character. And I'm just going to create a Sasuke test. Just for this video, Sasuke test. All right. And then it's very important to save this as a .day file. You do not want to save as the other one, the model file, because Unity can't read those. So save as .day so they can be imported into Unity. And then we also want to grab the textures. So we'll grab his eye textures. Almost all characters are going to have 3 textures. Very few have 2 textures. In Dragon Blade, they get up to like 5 textures. But we're just going to get the basic characters only have 3. All right, we do not need to grab the toon. This is just for Clash of Ninja's in-game shading engine. We use our own shading engine, so we don't need this texture here. Yeah, that's all we need from here in Brawlbox. So that's it for getting the models out of the Wii game. So we're done there. So we can close that. Now we're going to go to Unity. Unity is the gaming engine that I'm making this game in. So once you load up, we'll see our Sasuke test folder has been imported now, and we'll see the models here. So a couple of cool key things we need to do before importing is first, we need to fix the model a couple of things we need to do here. So I'll show you an example. The scaling in Clash of Ninja is the worst thing ever. It's so bad. Basically, they scaled up the kids in like Revolution 2 and the GameCube games to be massive so they fit better within the fighting mechanics. They basically almost scale up to the same size as the adults. You can't really tell too much in the game because the way their stances are, adults stand up straight in most cases, and then the kids are more crouched, so it looks like they're shorter. But if you were to stand them all together, the kids are massive. So I have to, of course, fix that in my game because all the characters are in one game. So, and every game has its own unique scaling system. Like the scaling in Revolution 2 is completely different from the scaling in Revolution 3, which is also different from like the scaling in like it changes so much. EX3 has different model scalings. It's so frustrating. So anyway, I'm not going to bore you to death with scales. Basically, this is how I scale them before I bring them into the game. So these are kind of the details around the model that I'm about to import, or that I have imported. So don't worry about the math. I figured this out on my own. I scale, and rather than scale the kids down, I'm just going to scale everybody up to make it easier. So just better. I designed the game starting with the kids already scaled up, so I was like, I'm not going to redo the system. I'm just going to scale everybody up to make it easy for import later. So the Shippuden cast, specifically the kids from the Shippuden cast who are now in Shippuden teenagers, they need to be scaled to about 1.15. The actual scaling in the game is about 1.14, but I decided to give them an extra point just to maybe give it a little bit more contrast. So we're going to change this to 1.15 for pretty much anybody from the Shippuden cast who was a child in the previous games. And then I'm going to, so that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we need to do is the normals. I won't go too much into details, so I'll try not to. But normals are essentially what allows the game to recognize which parts of the model to light. It's basically what controls the shading. Normally on a high poly model, it's okay to import those. These are not high poly models from Clash of Ninja. They're just not, which is fine. We'll let Unity calculate these. So Unity will look at the model itself and calculate how to do the light. And what we can do is we can adjust this smoothing angle all the way to max 180. This will give us the smoothest shadows as possible for that low poly model. And to save these changes, just hit apply. The second thing we need to do before we import this model into the game, because you actually cannot do this, these steps you cannot do retroactively, they'll mess up the model that you already have once imported. We want to export these materials. A material is essentially what paints the texture onto the model. So it's kind of like the blueprints that tells it where to map which. That's a material. They're built into the model that we exported, which means we can't change it. So we want to pull them out of the model so then we can change it later. That will be important later for shading. So I usually create a separate folder in the base folder called mat. So we're going to save this inside our Sasuke test folder. Mat short for materials, or you can name it materials. That's common in game design, and change it to say mat materials for your materials folder. And we're going to save. And now you'll see those three materials just populated here, showing these are the extracted materials now that are tied to this model. And that's it. You don't need to apply anything. It's automatically done once you save. And then we're done here, and you'll see our materials folders here with the three materials as such. And the textures automatically, fortunately, assign themselves. That's what's here. Yep. So we'll come back to textures later. So now we're ready to bring the character into the game. So, oh, that shouldn't be there. There we go. So this is the model. We're going to go ahead and drag that into our scene. This is just an editor scene. This is where I do to set up the model before I actually put them in the, run them in the game. They have to be set up and configured to work within my engine. So right off the bat, you can see a couple of weird things. The model, for the most part, loads exactly as it would in EX3, just minus the shading, because we're using our own shading, not the game's in-game shading. So the only thing that's really off with the shading. The only other problem is you'll notice these objects, these were not visible when we exported. It's because they were there, they were just turned invisible. So we can make those invisible as well, but I don't like to do that. Basically in Clash Ninja, what they would do is anytime you have a weapon, the weapons were always there just invisible, and when you go to use it, it just turns visible. I don't like that. I like to spawn the weapon when needed. So that way I can just write a code and anybody can use a weapon versus having to add a kunai to every single person's hand that needs a kunai, and you have to do it for each hand. It's just a hassle. So I'm not going to do it that way in my game. But important note, you'll notice everything's in blue. We actually can't really change anything when the model's in blue. This is because it's still connected to what we just imported. So we have to just basically unpack the model so we can edit it. just like, it's basically, think about it like a zip file. You want to extract before. So we can do that by right-clicking and doing the prefab and unpack completely. All right, this will now let us make changes to it. So the first thing I like to do is actually get rid of the outline. You say, well, why do you need to get rid of the outline? It's cel-shaded. It's because this outline is actually a physical object. That's how the original Clash Ninja game did it. They just put a black outline object on there. And while this works in Clash Ninja, it doesn't work for my game because I want to be able to change that outline when you zoom in. Like, for example, if the camera was really this close in game, the outlines would be this thick, those bold ass outlines. I don't like that. I want the outlines to shrink when the camera gets closer. And I have a code for that already, but in order to generate new outlines, I need to get rid of the old versions. So these are physical objects that can be selected and deleted. The easiest way is if you select the first one, so this is not the outline. If I click it again, then it'll select the outline. Typically, the game groups them over here. So I see this is at the top. So usually these first several polygons are going to be outlined. Easiest way I like to do is just start from the top and highlight until pretty much the whole model is highlighted. That has an outline. So just go all the way down. His hair doesn't have an outline, so we can leave that. All right, so that's pretty much the whole model. So that should be all the outlines. So I'm going to delete those, and now you'll see the outlines are gone. And we have just the bare model left. And just to confirm, I'll go to this last top item, and it looks like it's the pants. If I turn that off and on, you'll see that we're now into the hard things. These I want to keep. So the second thing I'll do is delete these extra items. I'm going to spawn in a sword later. I won't cover that in this video, but I spawn in weapons, so we can delete all these extra weapons that were there, part of the original model. Just delete these all together by just clicking on them and clicking delete. So now we have the final model. It's okay to leave parts of the weapons that are part of the sword like this. This is fine to leave. We don't have to worry about spawning this in because this is part of this outfit. So this is still okay to do the traditional way. We want it there most of the time. So rather than trying to spawn, we'll just leave it there. And yeah, part of the outfit. So that's fine to leave. All right, now we have the base model done. We can take a break from this for now. Actually, building a character to fit my game is very time consuming, so I usually copy and paste from other models to streamline the process as much as possible. As you see, as long as it's already been, and we still don't have a model that does anything in the game. This model does nothing. No moveset, no hitboxes, no shading, nothing. So what we can do, actually before we do that, we can fix the shading issue. Now that we've removed the outline, if I go into my materials folder again, I can select all of those materials and go up to the shader. This is what controls the shading. And I select my custom shader, which is a character shader, as I named it. This is going to go ahead and apply the shadows as needed. And it actually controls the outline as well. It's part of the shader. It automatically adds outlines too to the model. This is going to give me clean outline for the entire model, not just the parts out. So like Sasuke's hair did not have an outline before. I don't know why EX never gave him an outline for his hair, but now he has an outline for this hairstyle. And the outline can be changed. You see through the slider, and I wrote a code to change this, so I don't have to manually do it. But if I want to manually do it, you can bring it big for when the camera's far away, such as like on the bottom screen, and then bring it tiny for when the camera's up close, like on the top screen. So this can be adjusted live during the gameplay. I usually leave it on the default of 25 while editing because that's I'm usually up close sometimes and far back sometimes, and this is like a nice medium to be on while editing the model. So we can do that much right now. Great, and that's pretty much it for the shading. It's pretty much done. We'll come back to textures later. All right, so moving on to the to fixing everything else up, I'll grab another character. Let's grab Naruto because he's about the same height as Sasuke. So what I'll usually do is I'll find another character that's about in the same height and proportions. That's important. I'll show you why later. And then we're going to bring them into the game. So we'll go ahead and unpack them as well. The reason why we're doing is because this object you'll see, there's no components tied to Sasuke, but look at all these components tied to Naruto. I'd have to add all of these and configure all of these manually. So rather than doing that, I'll just use the ones that I've already done from the originals. So the first thing we'll do is we'll open up Naruto's model and we'll see this root and the poly. The root is going to be the bones, so what controls the model, and then the polygons are, of course, the polygons, the physical model itself. So I'll open this up and I'm just going to delete all of Naruto's polys. We don't need Naruto. Naruto's done. We're getting rid of his assets. So I'm going to grab all of those and I'm just going to delete them. Get those gone. For the root, we actually are going to need to reference this later. So I'm not going to delete these yet. I'm going to move these out of the way for now. And then this is going to give me a blank root and a blank poly because we're going to add Sasuke's details in here now. So before I do that, I'm going to configure this as well. So the naming scheme for the characters are going to be the first 3 digits are their character code. So it's usually their initials. So Naruto's is NRT. Sasuke's are going to be SSK for Sasuke. Underscore DEF stands for default form. So this is where I would change it. For example, this is default Sasuke, so this will be DEF. If this was curse mark Sasuke, I will put CM2 here. But this is the default version of him, so DEF. And then the A stands for the outfit. This is his first outfit in the game, so this will be A. For example, his Kirin outfit with the black would be his B outfit, and then like his Dragon Blade outfit, because that comes second, would be his B outfit, and then his black, his black outfit from Kirin when he fights Itachi, his Kirin outfit, that'll be outfit C. This is so that way you don't select the same outfit when you're doing player 1 versus player 2. You can only have like outfit A and outfit B, or outfit B and outfit C, so on. The number represents the variant of that outfit. So even though this is outfit A, there may be multiple variants. Like, for example, what if there was a variant of this where he had bandages, where he was injured? Just as an example of something like that that was iconic, that deserves to be a part of the model as a variant. I would make that A2, meaning it's still an A outfit. So even if you were A1 or A2, player 2 still cannot select an A outfit. They would have to get a B or a C. But maybe whoever has that A outfit, they can switch. Well, do I want him to have the bandages, or do I want him to have his blank? Just a nice way to incorporate more outfits without breaking the character select and having two very, very similar. Such an Anbu, like an Anbu, having the mask on or off, that's one outfit. And the mask is not enough to make it a separate outfit. So with the mask would be like A1, without the mask would be A2. For example, or maybe the mask on the head is A3, so you can have those customizations without, that's just something I did for my naming scheme. So we're going to be Sasuke outfit A1. All right, and now we'll edit the components for him. So the first component here is the basic movement. Everyone's going to have this script added. This is what tells the game who the character is and how they operate outside of their physical moveset. So the first is the name variable. I'm going to, and this is what enables movement too. It's exactly that basic movement, their hits, all of that stuff is controlled by this script. And then I just have to tweak a few variables. The first is the name, specifically when the character is in the game, what displays at the top. This is that name. So I'm going to change that to Sasuke Uchiha. This is also where I would put, if there was, let's say, an extension, let's say this was curse mark level, I would put in parentheses curse mark. Or I could put, pre-time skip if this was younger Sasuke. But this is just regular Sasuke. If this was Mangekyo, I would put Mangekyo and so on. But this is just regular Sasuke Uchiha, so this would be Sasuke Uchiha. Second is their max power. So this is what controls the power gauge. Even though the power gauge is a fixed size, and I know it's the power versus health, they still do actually have health points. The health points basically determines how quickly they die. So like, if you have a lot of health points, it's going to take a long time to build up that to defeat them. Versus if they have a small max power, it's going to be easy to get through that and overpower them. So 300's around average. Sasuke is, and I had Naruto at 310, a little bit above average on his power because he's pretty strong. 350 is usually like Raikage level. So for Sasuke, he's not as strong as Raikage in terms of power, but he is a little bit stronger than Naruto. I'd say maybe like a 315 for Sasuke. I can, these can always be adjusted. I expect, as the game gets released and we release characters, people test them, they may say, hey, Matt, this character is too strong. So these may get tweaked in the future. I just like to start somewhere and, see how it goes. And I can always tweak them later if needed. It's just a variable. Max block. This is basically how many hits they can take standstill blocking before their block shatters. 100 is going to be like the median, but actually the median kind of on the strong side. Like if you have good block, you're going to be 100. If you have like weak block, you'll be like maybe 70. If you have like a superb block, maybe 120, 130. Or if you have like ultimate defense like Sasuke, Susanoo, or Gaara's Sen, maybe 150. That's kind of how it works. Sasuke in base form like this is not too strong. I had Naruto at 90. Like they get beat up, they get hit on quite a bit. They get beat quite a bit. So I'd say Sasuke is probably about a 95 in this range. Like he got pretty scratched up by Deidara. So I'd say he's maybe a 95, just a smidge stronger than Naruto. Someone like, for example, Raikage would be strong. Tsunade, she will be super strong. She would probably have like a 120 for Tsunade, for example. Walking speed, 4 is about average. That's where I had Naruto. Sasuke doesn't walk really any faster than Naruto. Most people are going to be right around there. Slower characters like Kiriko may be like a 2 or 3. Faster characters, walking speed, maybe like a 5, max a 6. I can't imagine anyone actually walking at a speed of 6. That's crazy. That's almost like a light jog. Dash, this is of course their dash. I had Naruto around 13, which is pretty average, 12, 13. Sasuke is faster than Naruto in this range, but he's not at his fastest. He's the fastest in Sharingan mode. So I'll maybe give this Sasuke, I'd say, maybe a 14. Maybe I'm kind of leaning towards giving him a 15, but I think maybe I'll save that for like Sharingan will probably be a 16, so I think I'll put him at 14. So that way it's a big jump. You'll be able to very clearly notice how much faster he gets when he opens up Sharingan and jumps to 16 versus if I put him at 15, yeah, he'll be fast in general and gets a little bit faster with Sharingan, but I want that to be kind of more obvious. So I'll make him slower in base and then stupid fast in Sharingan mode. But of course his, like things like block may be affected in Sharingan. He may have like no block in Sharingan mode, for example. So he can't block at all, but he's fast as fuck. So sidestep is usually directly correlated to dash. It's usually always going to be faster than walking because they're typically running, but a sidestep is typically a light jog. It's not as fast as dashing ever. I almost never get anyone faster than a 9 unless they're like Minato may dash out of 10, but most people are around 8, 7 to 8. I'll give Sasuke a 9 only because he's running stupid fast. So his sidestep will be about a 9 as well. That's on the fastest side of things with the sidestep. Evade is how quickly they backflip, or how far they go specifically, how far they go when they backflip and evade. Sasuke's about average. He doesn't really move too much. He's not that flexible. I had Naruto about 7, and I put Sasuke about the same. That's about average. Someone who clears a lot, who's very agile, like super agile, like maybe someone like Ten, who's a weapon user. She likes to get distance really quickly because she's a distance fighter. She will probably be someone who has like a 9. Evade, which gets you the hell out the way, versus someone who's more close range, like Tsunade, for example. She may be like a 6. She's not going to really move too much out the way because she's hands-on right at you. So that's kind of what the methodology on that. We'll leave Sasuke at 7. Next is colors, which I usually start here. So color scheme, I'm not going to go too much in color theory, but Naruto's are orange and yellow based off of orange being his primary outfit color and yellow being based off his iconic hair color. Sasuke's not as easy because he has a bunch of kind of neutrals. Like he's got like a kind of grayish, bluish thing here. He's got like a purple scarf or a purple robe, so we'll definitely use purple as one of his colors, and he also uses Susanoo later. So purple's definitely one of the colors I want to use, but I wouldn't say purple's his primary color. He still has a lot of blue going on, but I don't think I'm going to use one of these kind of like very saturated blues. Sasuke's always kind of been identified with blue, like Chidori, so I'll still use a bright blue, maybe like a 0.5 between like super blue and then cyan. A 0.5 is kind of like a soft blue. So I'll go like a soft blue, and then for a secondary, based off of his cast mark, in like his first form, and then his Susanoo in his second form, I'll use like maybe like a, let's do like a 0.5, 0.75, and then maybe like a 0.25 purple. Yeah, that's a decent purple there. And then, so yeah, these are like his 2 colors. Maybe like when I do the Mangekyo, I'll switch them because in Mangekyo Sharingan, he's using his Susanoo often, so it's pretty easy to have him purple. This color theory is pretty simple, usually based off the character's outfit and hair and things like that, but sometimes it's just a little bit more strategic than that. So it just so turns out that orange and yellow is what we call the complementary colors of blue and purple, meaning on the color wheel in color theory, they're opposites. So you'll see things like red is the opposite of green, and you'll see characters like Mario and Luigi, for example. Orange and blue are opposites, hence Goku and Vegeta, or in this case, Naruto and Sasuke. And also yellow and purple. Notice Wario and Waluigi. So this is typically something you want to do for subtle references, either whether you're showing that 2 characters complement each other, such as Mario and Luigi, Wario and Waluigi, or showing that 2 characters are always clashing. They're like direct opposites, such as the personality of Naruto and the personality of Sasuke, personality of Goku and the personality of Vegeta, just 2 polar opposites. So it's a great way to give visual contrast. So For Naruto, his primary color being orange for Shippuden outfit and secondary yellow, I'm going to make Sasuke's primary blue, which is the opposite of orange, and his secondary purple, which is the opposite of yellow. So there is just a little bit of color theory in there. I do think about these things when I assign colors. And same thing with like Team 7, like Sasuke's color is blue, Naruto's color is orange. So for Sakura, I want another strong color. So rather than using pink, which is more soft, I'm gonna use red. So it's like red, blue, and like orange, like these very strong colors that represent them as a team. Versus someone like Hinata, Kiba, Shino, they're all going to have more quieter, neutral colors. So like I think Hinata's like a light purple, like a pale rose. Shino's like a light pale green. Kiba's like a light gray. They have more neutrals to kind of represent their teams. So it'd be kind of weird if she's like a bright blue and then they're all these dull colors. So it kind of like, I do think about that as I plan the colors for their power bars, because this is going to be that primary color, the power bar, and it also ties into their weapon. That trail, when you throw a kunai and there's a trail behind it, that's based off their these colors here. So I usually have a scheme of either using the bright to like a weaker to a stronger color, or I'll usually do the dark to the light color, this being the beginning of the trail and this being the end, also what you see most. For Sasuke, there's a little bit of methodology here too. He starts off using Chidori a bunch, so that's kind of the start of his trail. And then he ends in the show using Susanoo more, which is purple. So that's kind of reflected in his color scheme. When he slashes his sword, you'll see this kind of contrast of color from blue to purple. So both colors represent Sasuke together, but like there's definitely a bias towards purple. That's as the character progresses, he's going to be using purple a lot more. So I want his color scheme to match that more versus the opposite of going from purple to blue. I want the purple to be the stronger color on his, and you can kind of see it here, visualizing if a kunai was being thrown, this would be the front of the kunai and it would kind of pan into purple, and you see purple is definitely the stronger color here. So this is all color theory, and I may switch it, like maybe this Sasuke has blue to purple, maybe one has purple to blue, for example. It just depends. I do believe for Sasuke, most of them I'm going to keep blue to purple, and I think for Naruto, what did I have? Yep, I had yellow to orange, but like young Naruto, I think I did orange to yellow. So yeah, you can do, I swap it up sometimes. Anyway, the final object here that we need to adjust is the eyes. Normally I take a screenshot of their eyes, that's over here, you see Naruto's eyes. I'm not going to take a screenshot, I already have screenshots of Sasuke, so I'm not going to show you guys that. That's a different video. But I'll go ahead and change these to the Sasuke eyes that we already have. So SSK, where's my SSK? SSK. All right, and there's Sasuke's eyes for this model. They were already taken, so I'll use those. All right, so that's it for basic movement. Normally they would have another script for their moveset, which will show like the Sasuke moveset script, but I'm not ready to develop his moveset yet, so I use the dummy script. Anyone whose movesets I'm not ready to do yet, I use dummy script. So that way they'll run in the game, and they'll be able to do basic things like everyone can throw, so I just have to throw in there just so I can know that buttons and inputs are working on their model. So I just put his dummy script in here, and that's it. I don't have to do any of this because he's not fighting. But normally this is where I would tell it which, like for the character specific things, like what does Sasuke use? Does Sasuke use kunai? This would have like his kusanagi sword in there. That's where this would go and hit the Sasuke specific stuff, while this is the more generic stuff that every character, that applies to all characters. So anyway, there are some extra things that I'll need to do. For example, the animator. Normally I would want to grab Sasuke's controller, so I guess I should do that as well. Everyone needs their own controller. This controls the animations. So everyone's going to have different animations, so they need their own animation controller, as we call it. I already created one for Sasuke. Typically I'll use a dummy one, such as just a basic Chunin one. I'll just do that. Basic Chunin controller. Actually, I think I already have one for Sasuke just for fun, yeah. So I did Sasuke's controller already, so I'll just use Sasuke's controller for now. So yeah, we have Sasuke's controller, and that's it. That'll make sure the animations we import are correct. And then the colliders, we'll get into this later. I would normally tweak the collider for different size characters. Sasuke and Naruto about the same size, so I use the same collider. So we don't have to tweak those, but this is where I would tweak the size of the colliders. So 0.5, 4.5. This is about where I need it to be in order for the character to collide correctly in game. But someone like Hiruko would be huge. I think Hiruko's collision, his radius is 0.75. So like, yeah, it does change per character, but yeah, this is what does that. But we won't get into collision. That's a different video. I'll do that later. All right, so we're done here. So now we need to start adding in our assets to this so that it runs the game. First, we're going to go back to that Sasuke file. We're going to open it up. We're going to grab all of his polygons, and we're going to drag these into the poly folder. While they're still selected, we're also going to go over here and change their layer to the character layer. This is so that way, I have the camera set up to where it colors the model individually in terms of how it looks in the game. And so it's going to be looking, the character camera colors anyone on the camera layer, essentially, on the character layer. So you got to make sure they're here to be rendered properly on screen. You don't always have to do this unless you're using like methods like me to color the characters separately from the stage. Basically, I want the characters to be bright and poppy when they're colored on game, very vibrant colors like in the anime, while the background's a little bit more neutral there. So it uses a different scheme, more blurred a little bit for the background elements. So those are going to go on the stage layer for the stage elements, but for character, we always want them to be on the character layer so they have that bright, poppy look when they are loaded in the game. The other thing we need to do too while we have these selected as well, we need to change the shadow type to two-sided. Sometimes the back side of these models are not basically modeled, and so the shading may not look correctly if it's shining from that side, but we obviously know it is a solid object, and just because it's not solid on one side doesn't mean it should not render appropriately. So we want it to do two-sided shadows, so that way the shadows are always showing solid objects as solid, even if one side is not fully modeled. We will run into Clash into models. And the second thing we're going to do is update when off screen. What happens is if you don't check that, sometimes in the cameras like this, parts of the model will start to offload as they're off camera, and they'll offload to save on resources. That can sometimes, we don't want that happening basically to any model in our game. In games that have a lot of models, maybe, but in Oz, it's very important that the model is visible at all times, at least the characters. So I'm going to change that to update when off screen, which means it's always going to be checking to make sure that these are rendered even if they're off screen, because characters are just too important to not be rendered at certain times. All right, that's all we need to do for these. We're done there. The second thing we need to do is grab his bones. Now, this is the bones as rawly imported from the game. Bone and raw. I heard it, guys. I'm sorry. We just need to go into and get the hip. These are all just Clash Ninja specific bones. We don't need those. We're going to go all the way down till we get to the hip, and we're going to drag that into the root. The rest of this we actually will never use. Clash Ninja is very excessive in its bones. None of these are actually tied to the model and are just not used in my game. So we can just delete all of those remaining assets as we'll never need those in the future. So just doing these steps where we are now, we're almost done, but not quite. Just doing that now already allows the model to do basic stances now. The basic animations that I already had set up for that will now run mostly. You'll see Sasuke's shoulders are a little bit weird, and the legs are a little bit weird too. You can't tell from here, but they are underneath. So we'll fix that in a moment. So we'll go ahead and stop running that animation. All right. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to fix the bones. Clash Ninja is a little bit weird. So this bag bone, this is typically if you're carrying like a bag like on the back, sometimes they'll just have these copied from other models that they imported. We're going to delete that because we don't need it. Oh, sorry, we're in the wrong model actually. Sorry. I'm going to go to Sasuke's. That was in Naruto's. But same story. Sasuke doesn't have one. He actually instead has this Saya, which actually controls the sword. So we do want to keep that one here. So you'll see a lot of bones here. This stuff, all of this right here with these weird names, these are going to be clothes, as you can see there. So we do want to keep these, but I usually put these at the bottom of the mesh because we don't like to talk about those too often. Same thing with the sword. Now for the legs. The H leg stands for high leg, so like the thigh, and then it goes down to the low leg, which is like from the knee down, and then the foot, which is the foot, and then the toes. Clash Ninja never uses a heel. That can be deleted 99% of the time. There is 1% of the time where you'll meet that, but it's just because they rigged it incorrectly. But you delete the heel 99% of the time. And then same thing with side of the toe. They have this toe F. We don't ever need that almost ever either. Like 99.9% you can delete that as well. So you should have the toe, the foot, the low leg, the high leg, and that should be all connected. This is like their butt cheek. And like, I don't know why this is separate because it needs to be controlled at the same level as the high leg, but they have their separate. So I just put this underneath the high leg, basically to make it apparent. So this will make sure any inputs that the high leg receives, the low leg does as well. The extension does as well. I don't know why it's separate. It should be in there from the beginning. I think Dragon Blade Chronicles puts it in there, but in the original games, they just have it outside and makes no sense. So same thing for the right leg. We're going to go in here and delete heel because no one uses that. We're going to delete toe F. No one uses that. And we're going to put this right high leg extension inside the right high leg where it rightfully belonged from the very beginning. This fixes the leg issue that you can't see because it's behind the scarf, but his butt cheeks would be looking all twisted and weird without that step. All right, we're done with the legs. Now we can move into the waist. Nothing to do there. The breast, nothing to do there. The next comes the collars. So similar to the legs, they do the same thing with the shoulder. The shoulder has a separate thing. Now this one, I do understand why they did it. Some shoulders, this actually does need to be outside. So I'm glad they separated these. But likewise, we just want to go in here and make sure everything is good. So same thing, we should have all the fingers. Buki is for sword. We can delete that. We don't need that. That controlled the sword in his hand. So we should have the 5 fingers and all of their things. That's good. So does his sleeve. So I'm going to leave that in the side, the low arm. So we're good there. High arm, we're good. And then this high arm extension, like I said, that controls the shoulder only. And it needs 90% of the time it's going to need to be moved with the high arm as well. So just like the legs, we're going to put that inside the high arm. And we're good on the shoulder. And same thing with the right side. We're going to go all the way down, make sure, let me move this so you guys can actually see. We're going to go all the way down into the hand to make sure any excess items like this Buki is deleted because we just don't need them. They get cluttered later, and you'll see why. Close all that down, and then we'll put the right high arm inside the extension inside the right high arm so that it moves along as well. And then the last thing is the head. So it's funny that they put the hair in here because the hair is not actually rigged. Oh, what? I had no idea his hair was rigged. Since when? It was always stiff. I had no idea they actually rigged his hair. Interesting. Okay, usually they'll have fake hair bones up here that don't actually work. But I had no idea. Revolution 3 has rigged hair. And they never used it. His hair is stiff as hell in the game. But it was already rigged. You'll find that a lot. These models have all kinds of properties that would look great in the game if they moved, and they never programmed them to move. Can you imagine that if Sasuke's hair actually moved in Revolution? Look at that. It's rigged to be able to move. And they never used that in the game. Interesting. And it shows the back is rigged as well. Does this actually move? Look at that. I don't know what you would use that for, but look at that. The hair is actually rigged. Who would have known? Well, I just discovered something about EX3 model Sasuke. His hair is rigged. So that way it can move. Basically, you can add a property to this to make it move in the wind. And they never added that. Even though they have that in certain other characters, they never added it to Sasuke. And it makes no sense. Anyway, so we'll stop that. Okay, so the only thing we need to do in the head is another problem with Clash of Ninja proportions is they never scale the heads right almost ever. 99% of the time, the heads are too small. And this Sasuke's head is way too small. It may look normal now, but watch when I fix it. Typically, the heads go on about a 1.05 to 1.075 scale factor. I'm doing 1.5 for most of the Shippuden cast. Oh, actually, sorry, I don't want to do the head. I do the neck. Sorry. Let's get rid of that. I scale it from the neck and up, so it looks a little bit more natural. All right. So now the Sasuke model looks much more proportionate to how they're drawn in the anime. Heads are usually a little bit more exaggerated in anime, unless you're watching Bleach. Bleach has those small heads. But in Naruto, heads are much more exaggerated, especially to depict youth. These characters are not fully grown. They're teenagers. So their heads aren't as exaggerated as the kids. The kids are crazy exaggerated. But the adults, the teenagers are a little bit exaggerated. So I gave them a little bit extra exaggeration. And it just makes them all look so much better than when they have those tiny-ass heads. So I do that for all characters. All right, so now we've got that down. That's it. Now we can move on to the semi-tricky part. This is the last step we need to do in order to get this to run properly. It's at the hitboxes. Hitboxes are required. There's hit and hurt boxes. This is so that the character can actually be fought. Right now, if I was to import this character in the game right now, technically it would crash the game because the hitboxes aren't active, like aren't part of the model, so it would crash because it needs those to run. But let's just say it didn't crash. The model would still be able to run, walk, and all those things, but they would not be able to get hit. Neither would they be able to hit anyone because they don't have those hitboxes or hitboxes. So let's go ahead and add those. Those are actually inside Naruto's skeleton already. That's why I saved this and didn't delete it. The first one is inside the hip. I put hitboxes don't have to go on every bone, just generally some good key spots. So the first key spot is the hip. So I'm going to drop this into the hip. And just for now, I'm going to set its position to 0. This general hitbox actually contains both the head and the hitbox, but we'll get a little bit further into that later. And then before I move on to the waist and up, I'm going to do the legs. So I usually like to open up both of these, and we're going to go into the legs. There are 2 in here, one inside the foot. So left foot will go inside the left foot of Sasuke. And then there's one inside the left low leg, which is basically the kneecap. So the left foot and the left knee. Because it doesn't need to be up here in the high leg, because that's where the hip is. The hip covers all of this area, and then we catch the knee, and then the feet. These are the other key elements for like something like if you get hit low, or if you're getting tripped, for example, we need to be able to detect that. And same thing, this is going to have a hurt and a hitbox. So you can be hit in the leg, and it will count as a hit. And same thing, you can hit with the left low leg and the feet, and it will also count as a hit. And so the kneecap's always going to be at the 0 position, so basically right in the center of the knee. The feet vary, because I don't know why sometimes the feet are different. These are generally going to go at a negative 0.05 and then a negative 0, or 0.00. That's the average, but the way to check is I usually will just turn them on. They're invisible, but I turn on the actual shapes so I can see. This one's actually a little bit too high, so I need to bring it down just a little bit. So this one would probably be better at like a 0.8. I'll usually generalize it to like a 7.5 because OCD. 0.8 is such a weird number. All right, and so that's about fine, and then yeah, the rest is good. And then hitboxes are typically going to be exaggerated like this, and then hurtboxes are typically smaller because yeah, no need to have them be exaggerated because we want hits to still hit more accurately, but hitboxes need to be a little bit more exaggerated to make sure they connect combos consistently. That's why it's exaggerated. The red is the hitbox, so when you attack, if Sasuke kicks, it's going to have a wide radius for that kick. That also represents kinetic energy as well. And then the smaller one is like if you were to throw a kunai at his feet, okay, you only need to hit the green spot. You don't have to worry about hitting the red spot. So we'll go ahead and turn those back off. And now that we have that measurement, and then we can go ahead and delete this asset out of here. We'll delete them as we go. And then same thing with the right foot. Oh, we'll close that down. We're going to put the right foot collider and then the right low leg collider in here. Same thing, we're going to use that same measurement of 0.75, and then the rest we're fine at 0 and 0. And then for here, this one should always be centered in the middle of the kneecap, so this will always be 0, 0, 0, and we're good to go there. Now the legs are in the game, we're all set there. Now we can move on to the waist and up. So there's nothing in the waist particularly because it's too close to the breast. Breasts. So we're going to go to now we have the breast hitboxes. We're going to move those into Sasuke's breasts. And then we'll put that at 0 for now. This is the stage where I'll typically go ahead and fix these. Everyone has different proportions. So this is where I'll go ahead and turn on both the hip and the breast hitboxes. So I can see. So you'll see now, this is not really good at representation. You see these shoulders are being not included in the hitbox. We typically want to look at the green first. So what I'll do is I'll take this whole hitbox asset for the breast. I'm just going to raise that until everything is about here. So we're at about a 0.5. So that's pretty good. The red also needs to be exaggerated. So red's always a little bit bigger than the green. And we just want to make sure it's reasonable. So the green should cover most of the body. Usually it shouldn't really be inside too much. It should always be a little bit outside. Red should always be outside because we need that to be a little bit exaggerated. And then in terms of the hip, we just want to make sure that covers all of the hip and a little bit of the legs too, because the next hitbox is not until down here. So this is pretty decent where he is already at these. Sometimes I may lower this a little bit down. Actually, this is actually fine. A 0.25 is actually just fine for that. And yeah, and that's good. And Naruto and Sasuke are pretty even in sizes, so I don't have to resize. But if I did, this is where I would do it. Let's say he had a really big base like the Akatsuki, I would change this accordingly, to make it bigger to fit until it, was resized proportionately. So that's when I would do that. But these are already pretty good sizes, so we don't need to change those. So we can go ahead and turn these off. And I never change the scale here, at least for my game, because the way it's programmed, this could throw off the actual calculation of the hitboxes. So this should always be a scale factor of 1. You always want to affect the actual collider itself in scale. That'll make sure the collider itself is calculated properly. Because basically use this number and that number, yeah, it's a whole thing. So yeah, adjust the physical collider, not the parent object when it comes to resizing. But for positioning, you always want to adjust the parent, so it adjusts them evenly. All right, so we're done with the breast. I typically like to go ahead and knock out the neck because that's easy. So there's only one, it goes in the head. Excuse me, we'll drop that in the head. We can go ahead and delete all of that. Oh, excuse me. And again, always make sure the scale factor is 1 because sometimes the necks have these, remember I resized the neck, sometimes people are 7.5. So we always want to make sure this says a scale factor of 1. And it usually comes in at about a 0.5, a negative 0.05, and then 0.0. But again, we want to verify that it's the correct size and the correct height. So we'll turn these on for the head. All right, and Naruto's head and Sasuke's heads are roughly about the same size. I could possibly go a little bit smaller, but I usually exaggerate the heads a little bit because of hair. Like if I go any smaller, it's going to phase through the hair. So I usually would leave it a little bit exaggerated for the heads. Usually like this, I probably wouldn't change this. So this is pretty good size. Same thing with the head hitbox in case he does a headbutt. That's pretty decent. It is a little bit on the bigger side, but I think it's not big enough to change or go down. All right, so we'll leave that there. And of course, if I needed to adjust the height, that was a good height because him and Naruto are like the same. So that's the same. But sometimes I'll go up to a 0.75. Sometimes I'll need to go down to a 0.25. But yeah, that's good. We're done there. Last thing we need to do is the arms. So we'll open up that left collar and we go all the way down. This one is also going to have 2. We're going to have the left hand, which should always be at 0.5. Actually, negative 0.5. And the rest are 0. This controls basically how far it is in his fist. The hand is technically here, but we want the whole hitbox to cover more centralized, so that's why I move it this way a little bit, which is where that negative 0.05 comes from. So that's always going to be a negative 0.05 regardless of proportions. I think only one character in the entire game has a 0.1. It's a little bit further because they have massive hands, but everyone else is 0.05 all the time. So I just put that in from the very beginning. And then the one that goes in the elbow, which is this low arm, that one's just like the knee. It's always going to be centered in the middle of the elbow at all times. Typically, everyone's going to have about the same size for these. These don't actually have hitboxes. They only have hurt boxes, they only have hit boxes. I'm not going to ding if a hand sticking out in the hand gets hit. I'm not going to count that. So these would only have the one, which is for hits. So if you like elbow, you want that elbow to have a hitbox, or if you punch, of course you want the hand. But none of these can detect getting damaged. Only the middle of the body and the legs can detect getting damage. So yeah, that's it. So and these sizes usually, like I don't really need, it's just a hitbox. Like these all are always exaggerated, so I don't really ever tweak the size. They're just all the same size about there. That's a pretty good exaggeration to make sure it's always connecting no matter what. Yep, and that's it for that hand, and also we can delete that, and then we'll do the right side, and that's pretty much it. This video is long as hell, I'm sorry guys. This has to be done. I did this for 150 characters. There's 75 characters, like 76 characters in the game, and most have alternate outfits. Not everyone has an alternate outfit, but then some people have like 3 or 4 alternate outfits. So there's about 150 model assets for characters in the game that I had to do all of this for. So you guys can see why it took a month to get Teaser 6 done, and why I wanted to go ahead and do this now, because I didn't know all of this would be possible with the models. And the GNT4 characters are even harder than this. I have to format all the bones before I can even start working on like the hitboxes, and that's crazy in and of itself because they're not labeled. I have to relabel every single one of these bones, including the fingers. It's ridiculous to do GameCube games, but I wrote a program for that to help, but still, even with the help of the program I wrote, it's ridiculous. So anyway, let's go ahead and finish. Right hand, we're gonna do that negative 0.5, and the rest are 0 for positioning. And then same thing with the elbow one in the low arm. This is always going to be 0, 0, 0 to be right in the center of the elbow. And that's it. We can go ahead and delete this old Naruto skeleton. We're done with that completely. Our Sasuke model should work just fine now. All the shoulders should look great. Let's test it by running this test animation. Yep, and you see his shoulders are much smoother now. Yep, and now the character works just fine in the game. So all of his animations should be just fine. These are just a couple of the dummy ones. So like if I do like a dash, yep, I can kind of just test a few animations to make sure all the bones are working properly. And they are. I usually check the fingers to make sure the fingers, that one's very tricky because sometimes the thumbs are weird. I have to reconfigure the thumbs, but in this case, they're just fine. The feet look fine. Yep, everything looks fine. So this model is rigged proportionately. The head is moving just fine too. Yep, we are all set. And I look down here too for different perspectives as well. This is kind of like a game view. So yeah, everything looks good. So we're done testing. We'll stop that animation. And so to save this model, all we have to do is we'll go back to our Sasuke test file. All we do is drag and drop it over here, and that saves the model. And you'll see now it's in blue, which means the model is saved. And so now I can reference this. So this model is done in terms of the actual asset. Now to add it to the roster, I'm going to go back to our title scene. Don't need to save that. And there is a roster asset. Okay, there we go. So I go to this roster asset. This is like the end all be all. And I'm going to open up this character side. You'll see that's how many outfits are in the game right now. And every outfit ever in the game needs to go inside this folder, this little variable. So I would drag this asset over into here. And you see now it shows 50. And there he is at the bottom, and I'll typically move him to where he needs to go. Now, I don't actually need him, so I'm going to go ahead and delete him out of here because I don't need him in the roster. This is the actual official asset place. I'm not going to screw that up on a test. But yeah, once you add it and I move, you don't have to actually... Oh, the sorting here is where also it counts them when you toggle between the outfits. This is the order it's going to pick them from. So I need to make sure it's in order from A1 to A2, for example, in the order that I want them to show up in the game. This is also where I can tweak per season. So like in season 1 of Naruto, I want the primary outfit of Sasuke to be blue, but for season 3, when it covers like Search for Tsunade, Chunin Exams Final, I want the primary outfit of Sasuke to be the black Chunin Exams outfit. So then I'll put that one as the primary and I can tweak that order. All outfits will still be in the game, but just when you first toggle it, this determines which order it shows first. So I can just rearrange them by dragging and dropping. So this is kind of how I'll do that. And then, of course, by season 4, I'll tweak it back to have his rogue outfit as the primary up front. So I can tweak that at any time by dragging and dropping outfits in here. They don't have to be next to each other. They just have to be organized from top to bottom. So I could have Sasuke's blue outfit at the top and his black outfit at the bottom. And it's going to always load the blue outfit before the black outfit. And if I switch it, I can switch it anyway, as long as whichever one's on top comes first and the ones that come on bottom come second. That's how it works. And then to save it, I just right click and I hit apply to prefab roster. This is going to save it to all the other variants as well. So anytime I pull from the roster from anywhere, it's always going to, it's just going to update to have the new asset I just added. And then there is one extra step. I don't usually need to do this because I typed pretty much everyone I needed, but this controls the character select. So it's formatted to show the name of the character as it will be listed in the character select. So Naruto Uzumaki, the middle slash, and every piece of information is separated by a slash. So the first slash is the character name. The second slash is their subtitle, such as like there's Naruto, and then this Naruto is Sage Mode. So the first Naruto doesn't have a subtitle, so that's just blank. It moves on. But the second Naruto does have a Sage Mode, like he's perfect Sage Naruto. He is different, but this is what's different about him. Then you have the character code. So this is when it searches this roster. It's going to look for those first 3 digits to know, okay, who are we pulling for this character? So Naruto's code is NRT, and then Sage Naruto's is NR2, just to show these are different characters. So when it pulls Naruto's outfits, it's going to grab every asset in this list that is titled starts with NRT. So right now I have 2 NRT outfits, an A and a B. For NR2, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different outfits for NR2. So when I load in NR2, that Sage Mode Naruto is going to load all 5 outfits, and I'll know, okay, what to pull from. And the last icon on here is the roster that they belong to. So starting from 0 through 9. So 0 is going to be that first roster, then 1 is the second roster. So 0, of course, is the Leaf primary cast. The second one below that, roster 1, is going to be like the secondary Leaf cast. Roster 2 is the Sand Ninja. Roster 3 is the Mist roster. 4 is Cloud. 5 is, I believe roster 5 is the stone. I don't have any stone ninja in the game yet, so we skip that one. No characters there. Roster 6 is the sound ninja. Roster 7 is the rogue ninja, or unaffiliated, so things like Sasuke, who doesn't, he's rogue. He's not sound, but he is rogue. Akari, she's from, Akari and Kuroma's Mount Koryu, so they're unassigned. So they'll be here too. Kagura, Bando, they're rogue ninja, and Bando's, I think, unassigned. And then you have your Akatsuki roster, which is roster 8, and then roster 9 is the pre-time skip roster. So this determines which roster they go on. So if I change this to a different roster, then Kankuro pre-time skip would show up on that roster. So that's how that works. And so if it is a new character that I'm adding for the first time, this is where I would add them. I would just go ahead and add them as needed. Yep, and then same story, I would hit apply to prefab roster. Yep, and that's it. So yeah, and same thing for stages. Stages works exactly the same. This shows how the stages show up in the stage select, and then these are the actual stage assets that it pulls from. So it just will match here. If you select main gate from the stage select, then it'll match that with the main gate stage. Make sure that's what it loads. Yep, so that's how it works. And so that's what it takes to import a character. And then once it's imported, then I can forgot there was sound on. But that's when I'll be able to click play, and then they will show up in the roster. That's how it works. This is a long SL video, so sorry it's so long. But this is the process I have to do for every single new character that comes to the game from the Wii games. GameCube games are a completely different ballpark. I have to import them similarly the same way in terms of scaling all those things, but they have a different bone structure, and all the bones are unnamed. So I have to go and name every bone because the name is super important. Fortunately, the Wii games, they're all named the exact same. Dragon Blade Chronicles named the bones the exact same, so I don't have to rename those bones. But GameCube games come in because the way they're imported, the extraction process is already different. I have to extract them using another program and then import them as .day. Then I have to rename all the bones. I actually wrote a program for that. Let me see if it's in here. Yeah, but I had to write a program just for the name extraction. So, and that program is really big, just to extract the names for the bones. For most of the bones, there's still some I have to manually go through and modify. It's just a whole process for GameCube models. But that's why I wanted to do teaser 6 and show that, hey, it's a process, but I am successfully able to pull all assets in, and I actually used a couple of assets from Shinobi Striker and Storm. I wanted to make sure I could pull assets from there because I'm going to need that when I get to things that Clash Ninja can cover. For example, when I get to the 5 Kage Summon, I don't have a Mizukage model, so I'm going to need to, I don't want to use just the raw assets. Like I still want to use some parts, like I'll get Tsunade's face, for example, and then make it into Mei's face, but then I'll use the hair because I can't get that hair from anywhere. She has such a unique hairstyle. I'll get the hair asset from like Shinobi Strike or something and put that over Tsunade's head to make a Mei Terumi outfit. Maybe I'll use Tamari's dress and turn it blue for Mei Terumi's dress. And that's kind of how I built these models. I want to use as much Clash of Ninja assets as possible so it still fits in the game. But then the things that I just can't recreate, such as Mei Terumi's hair, can't do that. Or Tsuchikage as a whole, I'll have to use Tsuchikage's whole model because there's nothing I can import that would even come remotely close to Tsuchikage Onoki. So for him, I'll need to just import his whole asset. I hate doing that because I really want this game to feel like Clash Ninja, not Storm. And he's going to stick out so hard. But since he's so small, I'm hoping he doesn't, he doesn't stick out too far from the other models because he'll be super high poly and everyone else will be super low poly. So I hope it's not too bad. But yeah, so basically anything that's not that I can't get from the Clash Ninja models, I'll have to pull from one of those games. And I did that for some, like Haku. Actually, some of the hairstyles, I think, I did go on and pull from that game. I don't remember who. It wasn't for most people. But there were a few Storm and Shinobi Striker elements that I did pull to make sure they would import into the game. Naruto's goggles. The goggles are from Shinobi Striker. So I wanted to make sure those things like that could import. And they do. I only ran into one issue. Sometimes the models aren't rigged properly. And like Haku's hair, I wanted to use Haku's old hair when he has his hair down. I wanted to use that, but I couldn't get it to load properly. So I had to just put his normal hair in there that's pinned up for a secondary outfit, his B outfit. But that's fine. Maybe I'll retry it again in the future. But anyway, all the models work from all games, even non-Clash of Ninja games, even from like Storm and anywhere. I can import any model from anywhere and figure out how to get it to run in my game typically. And that's what Teaser 6 was supposed to prove. And this video shows you what that process looks like just for importing a Wii model. Now, clearly it was slower because I explained all this stuff to you. Obviously, I'm not explaining this up to myself. I just do it. So I'm pretty good. I usually can get a character in within 15 to 30 minutes in most cases, but multiply that times 150. Oh, we're not done. Sorry. One more step. It's not super important in terms of the grand scheme, but this actually does need to be done. Textures. The Clash Ninja textures are terrible. So let me reopen that original scene right quick so I can show you what I do with textures. This is probably also really time consuming. So this is what Sasuke looks like so far. It's okay, but look at this. What are all these marks? So I go into this texture and I fix all of that. Fortunately, Sasuke's textures are easy. I'll get a high quality Uchiha line at some point. I'm not going to deal with that right now, but I will eventually do that for HD. But all these extra lines, we do not need that. So I just delete them. All this extra shading, the game's in shading is pretty good, so I don't need any of this. So I'm just going to make these pretty solid colors. I usually just do most of this in Microsoft Paint. It's very easy to just kind of like grab and stretch. Some of the things you may still need, like I think I still need this line for like tomorrow. Actually, I don't like using the line for Sasuke's kimono, but I'll leave it in there for the sake of this video. This is for like the crease on his shoulder, that line. But the rest of this stuff can go. We don't need any of it. And of course, we need the Uchiha symbol. This is a disgrace. This whole, I don't even know what they were thinking with this. I'm just getting rid of every single line that's here. This should just be one giant blob. Solid color, we don't need any of the shading stuff. These black marks down here, that was originally for the outlines that were predetermined. But since we don't need those, we can go ahead and get rid of those too. But if this was like a mod, I would need to leave those black squares there because that's what the outline pulled from. But in my game, we don't need that. Same thing with the pants. No need for any shadows for the pants. Like, what are these things? No, sir. I guess sometimes I debate when to do it or when to not, but like the wrinkle marks for like behind the shin. I'm sorry, not shin. Behind your kneecap. That's what this is. I'll leave that one. I'm partial to it. I don't think I actually left it in the real model I put in, but I'll leave it for this video. But all these other marks I'm getting rid of. Fuck that. Oh, and down here. Boop. Yeah, just get rid of all of this. Get like a giant brush. Color connect. Yeah, and just get rid of all of those shadows. And we're gonna save. All right, and once we save that and go back to, oh, and you can tell from the compression, there's a little bit of pixels over here. I'm gonna get rid of those. There's just a little slight depigment here at the edge, and I like to get rid of those because that can sometimes translate poorly into the game. All right, that should be good enough for now. I can get an HD symbol later. All right, and now watch what happens when I load up the game. You see that? Just this looks so much cleaner and so much better, so much more like the anime. All right, and I'm hesitant to get rid of this line too. I don't like them, but we'll leave it in for now because he technically has them in some shots in the anime, but I don't like them. I typically remove them. And same thing for the second texture. Going here. Look at all these marks. I won't go too far while you're on camera because I know this video is already too long. But I'll typically get rid of all these like shine marks. We don't need these. They just don't look great. If they were high quality, maybe, but they're so low quality it translates terrible in HD. Because, well, technically I guess I should say HD because I'm in Australia. They translate terrible in HD. So I just like to usually get rid of them altogether. And yes, I do this for every single texture in the game, including alternate outfits. It can get really tedious. Sasuke's is actually relatively easy because he doesn't have too much. Like his textures were pretty much in just big squares, so I could just make big squares. But like these little minor details like this, some characters have this all throughout the model. And you can't move too quickly because then you'll ruin the texture. It'll become like, even this is like not super great texture work, but because these elements are so small, I can get away with doing things like this quickly and efficiently. But usually it's not this quick for most characters. But Sasuke, okay, that's mostly what I need to do for Sasuke. I didn't have to do any resizing for his. A lot of characters need to be resized and upscaled and fixed for some of the minor details. But this is fine for Sasuke. All right, and look at that, just so much cleaner. so much better, and the game will handle like shading like for these things. So I just let the game handle that stuff. The game does recognize when shadows are overlapping the character model. So like they normally would shade the stuff because the actual Clash Ninja game shading does not account for like overlapping clothes. So that's why they usually will have those marks, like all of this will be manually shaded out in the texture. But my game recognizes when clothes are overlapping, so there's no need to do that. It just looks weird and blurry and gross. So I got rid of all of that, so now the game can naturally shade all of that for me. And look at the shoes. They're so much nicer without all those extra lines, even though his feet look ridiculous. They're so much better without all those extra lines. Yep, and so it's just a much cleaner model. The shading makes it look much better. And this is without post-processing effects. Let me show it to you with post-processing. The easiest way is to put this on perspective. Zoom into Sasuke. All right, let's do this to the right. And let me add in the effects. So now this is a little bit over the top. This is what it looked like in viewer, but like without all those lines, this looks way prettier without all those lines. It is over the top. This is not the actual shader that I use in the actual effects I use inside the actual game. This is for the viewer. The viewer uses this for that kind of over glossy look on the viewer. But the in-game is different. I don't have the in-game loaded up right now for the in-game one, but when it does add extra color, it just looks so much better. So let me turn that back off. But even just without the extra blooming and things like that, it just already looks so much better without all those extra lines and stuff. So, yep. That's what I do to complete a full model, and now we're done. Of course, the textures update automatically. And yep, we're all set. Thank you guys so much for watching this long, if you even finished this long video. Thanks so much for watching, and you guys have a great day. Feel free to let me know what you think. I had to do this for 150 models for the Teaser 6, so I really hope you guys appreciate the amount of effort that went into that. I know I didn't have movesets done. This is why it takes so much time to get all these things uploaded. And this is for the simple models. Trust me, it gets so much difficult than that. Sasuke was one of the easy models to do. There are some models like Yugao, Anko, and Kurenai, and Kagura. They took 6 times as long to do this because I actually had to use Blender. Their outlines were fused with the model. And I have to get rid of the outlines for the model to load properly. So I have to open up in Blender and manually delete every single polygon that made up their outline. I know most of you don't know what that means, but yeah, it's a lot of clicking and deleting, carefully going through the model. It took me hours to do those like 4 characters to get them. That's Anko, Yugao, Kurenai, and Kagura. They all are like that. Oh, I had to do it for Orochimaru's hair. For some reason, they fused just his hair, so I had to extract his hair. I had to do it for Orochimaru's hair. Yeah, it was just, it's a nightmare. And when you load a character in Blender, they don't load properly when I re-import them. So it's just all of it, everything is just so drawn out for those kinds of characters. I still have one more model I have to do, which is, I have to do it for Hinata's alternate outfit. Awakened Hinata, have to do it for her. And then I also had to do it for basically anyone that was introduced in Revolution 2, I had to do it for. Revolution 2 was terrible at its models. And then I had to do it for CS2 Sasuke. He also was like that, but he's not in the game yet, so I don't have to worry about that. He's just a transformation. I didn't have to do him for Teaser 6, but I'll have to do that when I go to add him. I have to go through and delete every single outline yeah, it's just, I hope you guys enjoyed Teaser 6, and I hope you enjoyed this video. You guys have a great night.